So shed hunting. It's one of our favorite times of the year outside of being in the stand, actually hunting these deer. You know, we get to look at their antlers. We get a piece of what they are. Every year they drop their sheds. We're out there trying to find them. Who survived? How big are they really? Because looking at the trail cameras, you never really know how big a deer is. And we had some surprises when we picked up these sheds this year as well. So, you know, we got together, met with some of the neighbors, found out what they found, what we found, kind of shared different stories, and, you know, had a lot of fun this shed season. So we ran our cell cams not only during the fall, but through the winter, and we tried to figure out when each buck was going to shed before we jumped in and, you know, started walking all over the property and spooking deer out of the area. So watching these cell cameras is a huge advantage to knowing when to jump out and get some boots on the ground.
You know, shed hunting to me is a way to get out of the house. We've been cooped up all winter long in Minnesota, and typically we get a really cold spell toward the end of the winter, and you don't do anything, you don't really get out. And so once you get that first warm snap and some of the snow starts to melt, you're just really eager to just get out and do something. And shed hunting is the perfect thing.
So we run our cell cams most of the season. We have these Tacticam reveals out, and they're really, really important to seeing when certain deer shed. And we look back at last year, when we found certain deer sheds, and then when the majority of the herd shed as well. And then we kind of line that up with this year's cell camera data. When these pictures are coming in, when we start seeing bald bucks, bucks with no antlers, now it's time to go out, look for some antlers. So a handful of deer that we're looking for, SKYSCRAPER. He was a 5.5-year-old buck from what we can tell. We have a couple years of sheds between us and the neighbors right now, so we kind of know his age, we know where he hangs out, know when he sheds, and he was one buck we were looking for. Curly Fry was a buck we've had a couple years worth of history of. He's a 3-year-old buck. There was an 8-pointer that was hanging around a lot. His name was Slim Jim. And then HIGHN was another really cool buck that we're not sure if he's 2.5 or 3. One of the better genetic bucks for sure out here. Really tall, big split, 8-inch brow tine on one side. Excited about him. A buck we call Spider is a great 3.5-year-old buck. Kind of wide, nice tines, just a clean 10. Little Splitter, he's still around. Another great deer, kind of compact inside the ears, not a big spread, but he's starting to become mature. He was 4.5 this year. Next year he'll be 5.5. Just a really, really cool buck. There was actually a really nice 4-year-old buck on the property this year. He hung out by the pond a lot, and he was a big, clean 8. So after calling him the Pond 8 for so long, it just kind of morphed into PAYTON. You know, my dad, you know, we lost creativity one day, and he said, oh, let's call him PAYTON. So Pond 8, PAYTON. He's still around, and actually a really cool story behind this buck. Chris found one of his sheds last year. I believe it was the left side, and he found it late February. Well, this year we wanted to wait until March, so we kept getting this buck's picture. More pictures, more pictures, more video. Kind of creating a lot of history with this deer, and most of the time bucks shed the same time of the year each season. So we were waiting through February into March, and he just was not dropping his rack. Well, it's April now, and we're still getting pictures of this buck with his rack. So the neighbor had him last week. It's April 10th. So this buck is still holding. I have no idea why. Kind of frustrating in some ways because we were out there looking for this buck in particular, and he still has his rack. So not sure what that means for this season, but PAYTON, really nice buck. We'll see what happens.
We shed hunted with the family this year. Marilyn, my wife, and Carly, my granddaughter, and Chris, my son, and his wife, Kayla. We went out as a family and we got some exercise, we did some shed hunting, and it was just good to get out and just see everybody. Spend some time together on our own property. It's just a special time. It's a family thing, and it was wonderful.
So in the past, a lot of my shed hunting has always kind of been with my brother, with my father. Now having this new piece of property, it really allows me to get more time and my family involved out on these properties and shed hunting. So this year I was actually kind of happy. The 2 times I got out, one was a day date with my wife, and then the other one was a lazy weekend day, and got to get the daughter out there as well with my wife and just spending some more family time out there.
One really fun time of the year is the spring. I get to take my daughter, other family members out and just kind of walk the property. I have a really cool backpack that has a frame, and I can put my daughter in the back there. She likes to ride, just above my eye level so she can see around. She's eating snacks, having a lot of fun, and we just walk field edges. So just something to get outside, get some fresh air, maybe find a shed, but that's really not the most important thing. Get kids outside, let them experience it. My daughter absolutely loves it, and it's something that I look forward to next year.
So I know JJ had previously put a lot of hours in over on the Eastern Cedar Springs side of the property. So me and my wife and my family, we spent most of our time kind of focusing more on the Oak Roost side of things. It's a very wooded, heavy wooded area, mature timber. Right before we're about to leave, we're like, okay, well, we'll just walk down the logging trail. You gotta walk everywhere, right? So we'll just walk down the main logging trail, not expecting much because it's a wide open trail, easy access, just kind of the last little walk through. And no sooner than we just look up the trail as we first got on it, and 30 yards down there, here's a shed just sitting perfect for someone to pick up. My wife actually spotted it, and she went bolting, running off after it. She's the more competitive one, and I think she wanted to get it first, so she runs up there. And we found one of the nice up-and-comers. JJ's named him Spider, and we found one of his sides. He's got a really nice, typical 10-point frame, and he's just a nice young up-and-comer. Age class-wise, he's still a few years out, but you never know. In a few years, he might be one of our top hit listers out there.
So there's one buck that was on camera pretty much all season. Early season, middle of the gun season, late season, all the way through winter, and even into February. And I thought, this is a great buck, looks healthy. His shed's got to be in here on one of these bedding points somewhere. And I picked a nice cloudy day. Andy Orr was coming down, so just wanted to get out there an hour or two early and just do a little bit of scouting, see if I could find some sheds. Came around the corner by the old water pipe where we dammed it up, and there he was, a buck the neighbor named Slim Jim. Well, this is not what you like to find when you go out shed hunting looking for deer. One of the bucks that made it through pretty much the entire season. I was looking for his sheds, and I found him right here. Dang it. Had him on camera just tons of times. Really good 2 or 3 year old buck that we were just hoping we could get another couple years out of. He was here every single day the whole year. I don't know what happened. Pretty frustrating. Actually very frustrating. Had him on camera in January, so I thought for sure he made it. I don't know what happened, but dang it. Sucks. Had him on camera 4 weeks ago, so I don't know what happened to him, if he got hit by a car, poacher, disease, infection, I have no idea, but just kind of a really big bummer. We looked at his teeth. It ended up, he's a 2-year-old buck, 2.5-year-old buck, and really great potential, really good genetics. Ended up dying, and quite the bummer.
I was really excited to start walking through the cornfield because typically the sheds get dropped, the bigger bucks will stay close to the food, especially late season. They're so run down, they need that food, and they'll tend to bed close by the food, go in and out of the food, and you typically find some nice sheds right along that food area. And I'm expecting, I'm gonna see these big sheds and everything, and got into the cornfield, it was still standing, and everything looked like a shed. So that kind of caught me off guard a little bit. I was like, well, I don't know if I'm going to be able to see one in here or not. But then I looked at the corn itself, and I'm like, the ears and the husk and everything were there, but I peeled it back and there wasn't any corn on it. I'm like, wow, they really hit this stuff up good. Well, then I started checking all the corn. I got deep into the field, and I couldn't find one single ear with a kernel of corn on it. And it just blew my mind. Well, that made me realize that this year is going to be a big focus on food and nutrition, not only for the early season, the regular season, but the late season. And we've just added an additional 80 acres to the piece that's adjoining, and that has ag on it. That's going to be a food source in itself. We're going to be adding new food sources as we start to do a little work on the timber. and making sure that we have enough food and the right food. And that's going to be pretty exciting for shed hunting next year.
Shed hunting this year found a lot of old sheds, a lot of just, scrappy sheds that were chewed on, some were green, some were just skulls of shed bucks, just a lot of kind of crazy old stuff that I walked by last year. The reason why I probably found them this year is just because they're so much brighter, so they're getting bleached out by the sun. Now they really pop out, they're just white, and there's just a lot more contrast. You can see those antlers, especially on the cloudy days when antlers white, ground is real dark, maybe wet, and they just pop right off. But every once in a while you get lucky and you're out in the open area and there's a big antler sitting there, and that sure makes your day. Well, just came over a little crest of a hill, and this shed pretty much just made my day. So he's not the big boy out here, but he's one of the really cool young bucks. And there he is. Call him high and tight. I don't know if he's 2 or 3, but the neighbor over here, we do a lot of management with a couple neighbors that are really good to work with. He found this deer's right side. It did not have a split. There you have it. Pretty cool buck. I don't know if he's 2 or if he's 3, but he's a freaking stud. Stud muffin. Call him high and tight. He's tall. He's thin, super thin. Wow, what a sweet buck. That is awesome. Just bright, these overcast days, it's raining a little bit off and on, and these antlers just pop out here in this grass. So high and tight is a really, really cool buck. The neighbor found one side, I found the other side. The side I found was actually a little bit bigger. It had a split, had an 8-inch brow tine, but it's just a real thin rack, and I think this buck is only 2. We got a couple pictures of him last year, and he just grew substantially. So really awesome genetic buck, young. He's got the potential to just blow up, and we're really excited to see what he turns into next year. This area in general didn't have the best management practices over the past, several decades. So it's kind of cool to jump into this situation where you're working with neighbors and they're finally getting to see, how deer can progress from 2 to 3 to 4 to 5 to even, there's a 6-year-old buck out there. In the past, I don't think that was a reality out there. 2 and 3-year-old bucks were nice big bucks and they got shot. So it's nice to get together, share ideas, and really give them a feel for what we experience in other properties and other areas that we hunt across the country, to show them, what a deer can do regardless of what he is at 2-3 years old. They can really become something special at 5, 6, 7 years old. And now they're getting a chance to finally see that, and it's really cool. So it's just a great time of the year to kind of circle back with neighbors and meet up and see how everyone did that season, and kind of what the game plan is moving forward. It's just a really fun time.
We found a few sheds this year, a few the year before, but more importantly, the sheds within the area that's being managed, some of the neighbors, some of the sheds that they picked up, and the deer that we were picking up on camera at the end of the season is very inspiring and very exciting that there's a pretty good batch of bucks coming up through the property.